Hello and welcome to another episode of What Happened To, a series where we explain what happened to different athletes of various different professional sports. No matter if they are either some of the biggest names that you hadn't heard of in a while or a local fan favorite. In today's episode, Dom and I are going to be discussing a Cleveland baseball fan favorite and who was actually a pretty big name during his era, Travis Kronk Hafner. Now, it has been a while since we did the last episode for YouTube, uh, and we are trying to do more video form podcasts as well. Um, we're trying to figure that stuff out. However, we still do audio episodes, and you can listen to them wherever you get those audio podcasts. The link will be in the description below or can be found in the about portion of the channel. Now on to what happened to Travis Hafner.
David, I think you should start by telling everyone how he got his nickname.
I'll get to that in a moment. Don't worry, we'll explain how he ended up with the nickname Pronk. But first, Travis Hafner was born on June 3rd, 1977, in the small town of Jamestown, North Dakota. Attended a small school in Keston, North Dakota, which at the time didn't even have a baseball team, and he was the valedictorian for a class of 8 people. Well, yeah, that's not surprising for North Dakota, guessing how few people actually live there. Now, while his high school didn't have a baseball team, he did get all district honors in the sport of basketball, actually. So he was a pretty decent basketball player. He may not have been the greatest in North Dakota, but he was a decent basketball player. So how he got into baseball was he had always loved baseball from childhood. He would always bring a baseball bat out to his family's farm and basically practice with rocks. And so, which is pretty interesting.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Exactly. So it gave him some entertainment while he was on the family farm, if he wasn't working with them. So, and since his high school didn't have enough people to form a baseball team, he didn't really start playing in a team format baseball till he actually got to the University of Jamestown in Jamestown, North Dakota. While there, he actually attended a baseball camp that was being put on by the Atlanta Braves in the nearby town of Mandan. And there actually is a bit of an interesting story with this one, though, because the day prior, Hafner had gone 0 for 4 with a couple of strikeouts. While on his way to the camp, there was actually a big thunderstorm blowing through, and Hafner recalled to him, thinking to himself, "You went 0 for 4 in a North Dakota Legion game. Why even bother wasting your time?" And I think that would be a very interesting world for the Cleveland Indians, and because I don't know who the Cleveland Indians fans would have rooted for during that time. I mean, yeah, we had Grady Sizemore, but not
Well, I
someone.
mean, for him, that was a life changing moment.
Yeah,
He's on his way there, and he's like, "Give it a shot, or I
yeah,
can, just call it quits." He went 0
mhm,
for 4. What shot do I really have?
exactly.
If he just gave up on it, who knows if he would have pursued baseball any further?
Mhm,
Obviously, if he did, he wouldn't have made it to the big leagues, and the legend of Pronk would have never happened.
yeah. So luckily, apparently, it went well, and it helped catapult his career. Afterwards, he went to Cowley College. Now, um, how he ended up with his nickname. He actually ended up with his nickname while he was at spring training with, I think, the Rangers at the time. Um, and they were like, "Yeah, this guy his nickname at the time was the Project, and while there, he also earned the nickname because the Donkey, because apparently he ran around the bases like a donkey, and so they just combined the two, and that's how he ended up with the nickname Pronk.
Baseball comes up with some weird nicknames, man.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm gonna hand it off to Dom real quick.
Yeah, so getting into his career a little bit, he was drafted in the 31st round by the Texas Rangers in 1996. A couple years later, 2002, on August 11th, he made his MLB debut against the team that he would eventually become a legend for, the Cleveland Indians. Um, Eventually, later on in that offseason, he was traded to the Cleveland Indians. There was a couple of players that were also included by the Indians and by the Rangers, but the most notable player, I guess, was catcher Enar Diaz, who I kind of remember um, early in my Indians fandom. Yeah, and from there it kind of just grew. He developed into one of the best hitters in the league. There was a 3-year stretch where he was an MVP candidate. He led the league in home runs, I think, in 2006. And
Yeah,
I think he hit it. What was that?
remember he was almost at like 50 in 2006.
Yeah, he hit. I want to say like 48 home runs. He was just a machine. I remember, like he was the face of the team for a while, and I remember this. If you look at Progressive Field, the second deck in right field, I remember that being like Pronk's corner.
Mm.
Um,
That was
and
known
it
as
was
Pronkville.
Yeah, Pronkville. Yeah, I mean, he captivated. Sorry, he captivated the entire fan base. I mean, just with
Mm,
his personality, everyone loved him,
mm.
and I mean, his play on the field made him even more likable.
Yeah, and this is why it made him so what made him so popular in Cleveland. Just the fact that he could basically launch it to freaking space. And I
Yeah,
and I always remembered he would always be in conversations with like Big Poppy and whatnot in terms of power. Like that's how strong
yeah.
he was. And we all know the amount of home runs David Ortiz hit throughout his career. So just to be up there for any amount of stretch in your career to be up there with David Ortiz is A, you're good, and B, that's an honor because
Oh
he's one
yeah.
of the best.
I mean, he stuck around. I would say 2014 was his last year,
Mm,
but sorry, still getting over that cold a little bit.
yeah.
Um, I want to say 2012 he went to the Yankees,
Mm,
and he really wasn't the same. Unfortunately for him, I think there were some injuries, but I mean his peak was a little short lived.
mm,
Where players like David Ortiz, I mean their peak was like almost their whole career.
mm,
But man, for that 3 to 4 year stretch, he was up there with the best players of baseball.
mm.
Um,
Yeah,
so I
he was something to fear during
oh
those like
absolutely.
30
I
to
mean
40 months.
I mean looking back at those old lineups with him and Grady Sizemore, like that was just such a great 1-2 combo. And
Mm,
like we were talking before we started recording this, I think Grady Sizemore is one of the biggest what ifs in Cleveland Indians history
mm,
because he legitimately was on track to become the face of baseball,
mm.
but just so many injuries, he just could not stay healthy.
Yeah, and
You
it's
know,
like
he
you take out those injuries, and he was our new Kenny Lofton.
oh absolutely. I think if he would have been healthy, I think he would have been better than Kenny Lofton.
Yeah.
Which is saying something, but
Mm.
that could be another episode.
Yeah. Because
Uh,
we know how important Kenny Lofton was to those 90s team, and heck, even the 2017.
Yeah. But in regards to his legacy, in my opinion, for those outside of Cleveland, he's kind of a forgotten star. Um, you bring up his name to anyone that's not a Cleveland fan, they're like, they either don't know who he is, don't remember him, or like, oh yeah, I remember the name, but don't really know much about him. Then you look up his stats, and you're like, wow. Again, for that 3 to 4 year stretch, he was arguably one of the best in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you go to ask any local Cleveland fan, they immediately know who Travis Hefner is. They remember all the memories of him hitting balls almost out of the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
They remember Pronkville. They remember just how massive of a star he was to us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know after baseball, he was working with the team for a little bit. Um, as of 2019, him and his wife, he has 3 kids. They're living down in Tampa. For a while, he worked as a special assistant for the Indians, scouting both amateur and professional hitters. He also worked with the minor league teams as well. I guess in his free time, he just loves coaching his kids' baseball teams. Hopefully, we see one of them playing professionally at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be impressive. I mean, you're looking at probably one of the greats. And I remember when I was working for the Indians Guardians team shop, when we had the 2019 All-Star game, I was working the All-Star game. And I remember when we had what was it, the Cleveland versus the World like softball team game,
Mm-hmm.
he hit the softball for a home run. And it wasn't just like that like makeshift home run fence that they had up. No, this thing went to the like front 2 rows of the right field corner. That's how
He's
hard
something else, man.
that's how hard he hit it. And these guys were like, these guys were like, how did he not end up in the home run derby?
Yeah.
And I think
Oh
it's
man, I never thought about that.
yeah.
Imagine the show he could have put on.
And it was and I remember seeing another YouTube video on regarding that issue. And it was like because he was predominantly only a DH, and at the
Mm,
time, only DHs were in the American League uh, division, or not division, conference, and not in the National League. And so, because of that, like difference, he couldn't necessarily be in the uh, home run derby.
mm.
Anyways,
It's a
and
shame. It's a shame.
yeah, yeah, that I just remember going to so many games and just watching the guy just
Hmm.
the skin off the ball.
Yeah.
So, any quick final thoughts, or just any final thoughts in general?
No, I mean, other than I'm glad we did this because it kind of brought back some childhood memories of
Mm-hmm.
early 2000s watching the Indians. It reminded me of just how good Travis Hafner was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, he tends to be kind of like a forgotten star.
Mm.
And even though I'm a diehard Cleveland Guardians fan, sometimes you just need to remember just how good some of these past players were.
Yeah, and
And
I feel like that goes for a
it's
lot
amazing.
of, huh?
It's just amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like that goes for a lot of just players that play for Cleveland, and it's like
Yeah.
a lot of them are like, unless you look at like Francisco Lindor or um Shane Bieber or CC Sabathia or Cliff Lee, some of these like big notable names, and that you forget that there were also incredible other players that played for this team, even in the 90s. Most people think of Jim Thome, you got Albert Bell, you got Kenny Lofton, just to name three. There's several others on that team.
Well, and what I find unfortunate is some of those guys like Manny Ramirez,
Mm,
CC. You know, I'm not talking like just 90s. I'm talking, 90s, 2000s in general.
mm,
Manny Ramirez, CC, Cliff Lee. I mean, these are some of the best players of their era. I mean, Manny Ramirez is probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, hopefully.
mm,
People forget that they played for Cleveland. Their career started here.
mm,
They emerged as stars in Cleveland, but it's when they left that they really became, memorable superstars. I
mm,
mean, you ask an average baseball fan, about Cliff Lee, they remember him as a Philly.
mm.
Most people remember Manny Ramirez as a Red Sox. You know, most people remember CZ as a Yankee, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah.
so I think Cleveland gets overlooked for the stars that they end up developing.
Mm,
Um, unfortunately, I guess we kind of have the reputation of being a farm system for the big market teams, and I think that's pretty unfortunate.
yeah. And that's unfortunate for the rest of the players like Travis Hafner, um, who are actually, even if it's short lived, are stars in their own right.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm. So, anyways, I know that this may have been a quick episode, guys, but I just wanted to say thank you, Dom, for joining us. It was the first
Of course, man.
episode that we recorded together in a little while, too.
Yeah, it's been way too long.
And but yeah, thank you for watching and listening, guys. And hopefully we can get out more YouTube video episodes. But we'll get to that when we get to that. And thank you for listening and watching. Have a good one. Until next time.